Hey, what's going on? It's Instructor Mike. All right, we are at Eagle Sports Range, 5900 West 159th Street in Oak Forest. Come here for your firearms needs. I am here with,
Tasharra.
and we are on another episode of Instructor Mike Street Stop. So now October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we are going to ask questions or have a conversation about domestic violence. Okay, so in your opinion, what do you think domestic violence is?
To me, domestic violence is any violence that happens like either within a household or like among family, just close relationships. Is what domestic violence is to me.
Okay. Okay. What about between persons who are just having sex?
Yeah, that would
Adults,
be.
of course. Right.
I
Yeah.
would consider that domestic
Yeah. Okay.
violence because they have close like contact.
Yeah, absolutely. What about brother and sister? You said
Yes,
family.
family.
Okay. What about in-laws?
Yes.
Okay. So marriage. Okay, good.
hmm
So who do you think is, or not who, but who do you think could be a likely victim of domestic violence?
Um, People who don't have the necessary tools to really like stand up for themselves
Okay.
per se. Usually if you show like signs of being easily like manipulated or like sometimes too nice can be misconstrued as like, oh, I'm gonna make them a victim.
Okay. Okay.
So anybody who's just too open with information is can be a victim. Like if you just give off too much information.
Okay, okay. Would it be too much trouble if I teach you kind of like a theory? Okay, so I used to teach in the colleges. I used to teach criminology,
hmm
and in criminology there is a theory called routine activities theory.
hmm
So if you could imagine a Venn diagram,
hmm
right? Well, three circles, they all kind of intertwine, and in the
hmm
middle is crime.
hmm
So you've got three things that make it likely for a person to become a victim of some type of predatory crime.
hmm
Okay, and you did a great job just talking about those things already.
Okay.
One of those things is a likely offender, somebody who's likely to commit different types of crimes. And in this case, we were talking about just domestic violence, acts of
hmm
domestic violence, right? And then you have a person who's likely to be a victim of
hmm
domestic violence. Okay. And then you have the absence of capable guardians, or in other words, the guardians against that type of crime, right?
hmm
Like you've got mothers against drunk driving who are
hmm
against drunk drivers, not the people per se, but the activity, right?
Right.
You've got moms demand action who's against, among other things, the
hmm
perpetrators of active shootings and things of that nature, stuff like that. So, you got your police officers, security officers, average citizens,
hmm
who will go above and beyond the call of just average civility to step in and just help a person. So, what are your thoughts about that theory in terms of who can likely be a victim of domestic violence?
I feel like at some point, anybody can be a victim of domestic violence. Because usually it's not foreseeable for some people.
For some people,
For
okay, I
some
can see that. I
people,
can see that.
it's not foreseeable. Personally, for myself, got with an older man as a younger lady, not knowing that I'm setting myself up. Isolation, um, being isolated from others, not having that, environment or that community of people to protect me, being quiet, not saying anything. Um,
The
like,
guardians
yeah, the
against
guardian,
crime,
yeah,
yeah.
like the guardian, like I didn't have that. Um, yeah, so it's just like victims can, anybody who's open to just like being preyed on by somebody with like won't say like higher level of intelligence, but more so like what's the word I'm looking for?
The lack
Like
of knowledge,
yeah,
the
like
lack
yeah,
of how to defend
yeah,
yourself,
like yeah.
how to even look for the signs of when
Right,
someone is trying to.
right.
Okay. Do you think that domestic violence starts off as physical first, or does it start out as psychological? Like,
Absolutely psychological, 100% psychological.
okay.
Because once you get to saying something to someone so many times they start to believe what you're saying. So then if you're every day, all day telling somebody, oh, you're nothing, you're trash, and that's all you hearing, you're isolated from people, and then it's just like, well, maybe I am trash. So then you feel like that. So then it's like once they feel like, okay, I done beat you down to the ground enough. Let me move forward to the next step, which is then it's like physical abuse. So then
That's
it
deep.
becomes physical after you've like they've took everything from you.
Right. What about childhood? Before a woman or a man even gets into the arms of another person, what
Mm-hmm.
about, let's give parents grace because if
Mm-hmm.
they have not been taught and they have their own traumas, right? What about parents
Mm-hmm.
who speak to their kids in such a manner to weaken their mindset so they don't grow up and learn how to defend themselves? Is that same theory?
It definitely applies, and that is the reason why I ended up in a relationship that I had no business.
No shame, no judgment if it applies. But I want you to understand the words that you speak to your children,
It
it
matters.
helps the likely offenders of domestic violence see that if this person has a weak mindset,
Mm-hmm.
oh, they're easy pickings.
Mm-hmm.
Come on now. This stuff is
Mm-hmm.
too good. Okay. Here we go. Um, what are three things that victims of domestic violence can do
Mm-hmm.
to no longer be a victim of domestic violence?
I would say the biggest thing is to speak up about it. Um, Talk to whoever, because once you start talking about it, like once you talk about any situation, the more you talk about it, the more you can start to heal and move on forward. Without saying anything, it's just like you keep yourself stuck. Um, then we know it's hard to get out. Make a plan. You need a plan. An abuser is not gonna just let you go.
No.
They're not.
And where are we currently at right now? We're at a pew pew range.
Yeah, you gotta arm yourself too at some point.
At some point,
You
yes.
have to like make a plan and include that in your plan.
Hmm.
Like, how am I gonna protect myself once I leave this person that's abusing me? Because 9 out of 10 times they're not just gonna set you free and be like, oh, you don't want to be with me no more. I'm doing whatever to you. Oh, no.
And the thing is, we're not going to ignore the domestic violence stats that talk about the high likelihood of a person who does decide to arm themselves, that man or even a woman, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whomever is the stronger person in that domestic violence situation,
Mm-hmm.
taking your firearm away from you and using it against you. That's why first it has to start with understanding the trauma within yourself and not
Mm-hmm.
shame yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding the trauma within yourself and understanding what you need to do psychologically to build your mind up first so that you can protect yourself physically before you get the pew pew, so that way
Mm-hmm.
you can protect it. Does that make sense? Right.
Yeah, because
I'm
the pum
just
pum is not gonna matter if you're so emotionally invested to this person that if they're finna beat you and you pull out the gun and they're like, but I, it's not gonna work.
or
You
they
have to,
overpower you.
yeah, or they overpower you. Like you have to get to a mindset where it's either me or you, and you should always choose self first. Always choose self
Facts,
first.
please God.
Never put any person over you.
And that was there. So much for that question. You're right. There was a wonderful response. Here we go. There is somebody willing to cash a check on what you don't do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What I mean by that statement is think about who gets paid if
Mm-hmm.
you become a victim, right?
Mm-hmm.
Victim, no disrespect, victim advocacy services, but let's not act like you don't get grants and funding
Mm-hmm.
for victims. There
Mm-hmm.
are true bona fide victims, and then there are manufactured victims. Does that make sense? I'm just saying, right? So, and I get it, right? But there's somebody willing to get paid on what you don't do for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to decide, do you want to survive and do for yourself, or are you
Mm-hmm.
willing to constantly fall victim? Because sometimes, here's the thing, here's a statement that I find out.
Mm-hmm.
I find that sometimes these agencies don't really get to the root cause of the reason why a person finds themselves to be a likely victim. I
Mm-hmm.
think what they do is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you have experience in this, I think what they do is they shift you from one zip code to the next, moving
Mm-hmm.
you away from the actual attacker,
Yeah.
but they don't get to the thing within you that makes it likely for you to pick out that kind of person to be in that relationship with. And I don't want to victim blame, so to speak, but in criminology, there is a theory, and I'll land with this, right? Victim precipitation, the things that people do to likely become a victim of a crime. Does that make sense? Like, there are things that people do to escalate or to make themselves a likely offender. What do you think about that? What do you think some things a person can do to likely become a victim of domestic violence?
Um, don't stand your ground. The first time you don't stand your ground with somebody, they know that I have an end. Um, you are not strong enough. You're not, emotionally capable enough to deal with the type of trauma that I'm gonna bring you. And that's just being honest. We have people out here that are predators, and a predator can smell a wounded animal from miles away. Same with people. They can smell a wounded person miles away. They can see it in everything. So that's why I always tell people, you got to heal yourself. You got to heal that childhood trauma. You got to heal all of that.
Yeah.
Because without that, it's not too hard for you out here.
And parents who could be watching this, no shame, no judgment.
None.
But I want you to understand, I would like for you to understand that if you don't allow your child to practice no with you, if you don't allow your child to exercise boundaries with you, if they always got to say yes to you, if they always got to do what you say, and you don't allow them a safe space to practice no and explain why they said no, you are setting them up for the disability to say no when they grow up.
Yeah. I would agree with that 100%. My child, I explained to her, I apologized to her, I let her know, like, if you don't want to be touched, if you don't want whatever, you don't have to hug that uncle that you find weird. You don't have to. Because when I'm trying to force my kid to physically touch on somebody, that's giving her thoughts in her mind, like, hey, well, my mom is telling me that I have to do this because this is somebody in the family. No, that's how you set your child up to be touched by family members or friends, or just by telling them, hey, well, that's whoever you need to, no, we're not doing that. Like, we have to really set boundaries and let people know, like, well, my child said, hey, that's good enough. They don't have to hug you.
They don't.
My child don't have to hug you. My child don't have to give you a kiss on the cheek, grandma, whoever.
Let them feel like they can't. You see, they have to be secure and safe in themselves, and that is extremely, extremely important. No shame, no judgment. I always tell, my kids, look, I love you. You don't have to say you love me. You have the right not to love me and to be able to explain why you don't. Maybe it's something I can do to make things better, but let them own their emotions. Let them own that no. Let them practice establishing boundaries for the first 18 years of their life. Do you know how strong enough they will be able to stand up for themselves when they get older? This is an amazing, girl. Wonderful. Can I give you a high five? Bam. That is wonderful interview. Facts. Oh, this is amazing. I hope you all enjoyed this. This is Instructor Mike Street Stops. If you want to say any last words, you're more than welcome to.
Just make sure you're standing up for yourself. Make sure you raise your kids to be the best versions of themselves. Do not dim your children light. Meaning, don't tell them stuff like, who do they think they are? They're them. Saying stuff to children like that. Who do you think you are? So then when the man or a woman or whoever comes in the future, like, who you think you are? And they think, oh, right, my mom, dad, whoever said that, I'm nobody. So then that's the way they act, and they become a victim. So we're not raising victims. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do want to say this. If you care to share, okay, do you know someone, if you care to, you don't have to, no shame, but do you know if anyone's been a victim of domestic violence, and if you want to share a story of that and maybe even how they survived it? Okay. Even if it's yourself. It's
I can tell my story?
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome.
Okay. Well, pretty much, as I was saying previously, in an interview, being a younger girl with an older man and growing into that, like, I was preyed on by, like, I was a teen and he was an older guy, and it was just like, I didn't know any better, but as I grew and I'm like, this is not right, I need to stand up for myself.
Right.
Um, then I just
Yeah.
one day woke up and was like, it's time to go. It's time to go. This it's not working for me. And it was just like
Yeah.
it was up from there.
Yeah.
So it was
Yes.
I was done. I refused to continue to be a victim to, someone just controlling just, you know. Yeah. So
That's
I woke
amazing.
up and said,
That
this
was
is
enough.
it.
Yeah, that was
This
enough.
is it.
Now, sometimes people, did you find yourself having to get classes or talk to people? You don't have to mention any names, but what, if anything, was the breaking point? And just whatever you feel safe to share, what was the breaking point that made you understand that this was enough? Because sometimes we tell people
Hmm.
you can walk away, but that's easier said than done. You can
Right.
get up and go. That's easier said than done. Even you can get a firearm. You'll get people who say, well, take a concealed carry class. Yeah, okay, but the battle, like you said wonderfully, is psychological first. you know
Hmm.
so what, if anything, were you exposed to where it became the snapping point?
I really don't think it was a snapping point,
Yeah, well,
per
not
se.
snapping,
Well,
just
not snap like go crazy, but like a
yeah,
point where I was just like,
you woke up, yeah,
it was over time where I'm just like, this not working.
yeah,
You trying to control, my body, me. You trying to control the situation, and it's just like I don't want that for me.
right,
I'm bigger than that.
right,
Like I don't need someone trying to like dim my light
right,
again.
right,
Go back to the childhood. You're trying to dim my light, and it's like it's so bright,
right.
like
Love
it
it,
got to get
love it.
out there. So it's like you gotta go.
Yeah,
And like it didn't help that he was broke too, so he definitely had to go. It was time to head out. At that point, like I no, I was single with no kids, and it's like I don't have no kids. I shouldn't be taking care of no grown man at this point. So it was just like you abusive. It was
and you
just
broke. You can't be
and you
abusive
can't
and
be
broke.
both. You can't do both.
They're
It's
laughing.
you
No,
can't have both.
right.
That was, that's my story.
I'm
That's my
sure. Right, right,
situation.
right, right.
You can't, like it was just, it became a lot. So
And it's the
yeah,
lesson that we are teaching here. Where not no embarrassments. I said she did
yeah,
it. She did it wonderronyright.
yeah.
No names or anything. It's always the lesson.
Hmm.
Always the lesson. Okay.
Definitely a
So
lesson.
this was outstanding. I hope you all really enjoyed this. I hope you all learned from this. And stay tuned. There's going to be more episodes of Instructor Mike Street Stops.
Hmm.
October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we want to encourage you to be strong and give you the tools to be able to do that, not just talk about the stories and leave you
Hmm.
with, well, what do I do? We want you to be encouraged.
Hmm.
And so if you need to reach out to a domestic violence shelter, Google them. You can literally find the numbers anywhere, but I will post them in the links in the description. So stay tuned for Instructor My Street Stops. You did a great job. Oh, this is outstanding. Thank you. And I'm glad you now let me get her on the range. Y'all hit the shots. Y'all hear the shots. Okay, conflict avoidance is the best, but you cannot avoid conflict if you are
Hmm.
not educated on what causes it. All
Hmm.
behavior is communication. But do you understand the language that's being spoken by that behavior? This is Instructor Mike. You've been trained.